The third aspect is called perceived organizational support. And I like to think of this as, does the organization you're working for have your back? Do they value your contributions? Do they actually care about you as a person as opposed to just you as an employee or a worker? And I think it's obvious and it's pretty much common sense, but it's worth mentioning here that the more you perceive that your employer or your coach or your professor values your contribution to the company, to the team, or the class, the more you think that your coach or your employee or professor genuinely cares about you as a person, the more likely you are to be engaged and do a good job. I remember, again, going back to one of my first jobs after college, I worked for a company that really pushed me to develop my talents, even if I didn't feel like developing certain talents. My bosses at the time, they saw some strengths in me that I didn't know I had, and so they pushed me in the direction of developing those strengths. So even though I might not have liked it all the time, I did feel that the organization had my back and valued the contributions that I was able to make. I remember that same company also really wanted to, maybe not that company, but another company that I worked for was very concerned about our mental well-being as employees. And so they gave us several days per year where we could, if we needed to, no questions asked, just take several days off to recharge, to deal with an issue that we had. It didn't have to be a sick day. It didn't have to be a vacation day, but it was a day that we could use if we really needed the time to ourselves or to solve a family problem or just some space for ourselves so that we can be more productive employees. So again, when perceived organizational support is high, organizations tend to do better and people tend to be more satisfied with their jobs, right? And again, why is all of this important? It's important because if you perceive that your employer or your professor or your coach has your back, then you're going to have a greater commitment to that person and that organization. You're going to be more satisfied with the job you're doing. You are going to probably stay with that team longer than you otherwise would, even if you get frustrated from time to time. Right? Of course, we all get frustrated with jobs, with teams, et cetera, every now and then. But if you perceive that that organization has your back, you're more likely to stick it out. So it's a very, very important concept as a leader to be aware of. The last of the four concepts we'll talk about is job satisfaction. And job satisfaction basically reflects the extent to which we like our jobs. Sometimes we can't always explain why, but when you're satisfied with your job, that means you generally like it, right? You're okay with it. You are reasonably motivated to go to your job. And this is not just a one-size-fits-all type of a thing, right? It's possible for us to be satisfied with, four aspects of our job, but not two aspects of our job, right? There's some things about any of our jobs that we like and some things that we don't. But job satisfaction is that general tendency to like what we do, to like our job. So why do we like our jobs? And why do we dislike our jobs? You might say, well, it depends on the person, and that's true. Of course, it depends on the person. But research has shown that there are basically five general things that will determine whether we're satisfied with our jobs or whether we can't stand our jobs. And these are the five things that come up in the research. And maybe you can ask yourself these questions about your own jobs as we go through this. So, number one, does my job fulfill my needs? If it does, then I'm likely to be satisfied with it. If it does not, then I'm not likely to be satisfied with it. Now, needs could be a variety of things. Maybe our most pressing need is money, where we need a certain amount of money. And maybe that is what's fulfilling our needs. Maybe it's experience, not money. So maybe we're going to be fulfilled when our job gives us a lot of experience. Maybe, as it was for me early in my career, the ability to get more educated and to go to school and to earn a higher degree, right? So The question about whether it meets our needs depends on the person, but suffice it to say that a job that fulfills our needs is one that we're likely to be more satisfied with. Another real example from my own experience, as one of the companies that I worked for was expanding into other countries, I was really interested in possibly seeing other parts of the world with that company. So one of the needs that I had, or one of the wants rather that I had, was to apply my skills to countries outside of the US and to work outside of the US. And I was very grateful because as my company was expanding, I was allowed to travel and to see other countries and even to work and live in another country. So certainly it met the need that I had, and I got fulfillment and high job satisfaction out of that particular job. The second thing that drives our satisfaction with our jobs is, does this job meet my expectations? Okay. So if you go into a job and you expect the job to be fun, but it's not fun, then that job has not met your expectations. And so you'll be less satisfied. If you go into a job and you expect to get a raise of 6% every year, but you wind up getting a raise of only 2% every year, then that job is not meeting your expectations and you're likely to have lower satisfaction. On the flip side, if you go into a job and you think you're going to get 2% raises every year, but you get 7% raises every year, then that exceeds your expectations and you're likely to be more satisfied with that aspect of your job. The third thing is value attainment. So we talked earlier in the course about values. People tend to be more satisfied with their jobs if their job helps them achieve the values that are important to them. I have a friend and former colleague who works in a bank, but he really doesn't like banks or banking that much. He really gets motivated when he is able to help the community around him. And so the job that he has at the bank is a very unique one. He's in charge of helping the bank figure out where it should donate its money. And so his value system is focused around helping people in need, helping homeless people, for example, investing in communities that need better infrastructure. And so he loves his job and has a high level of satisfaction, not because he's getting paid a lot of money, but because the job that he has is directly matching with his value system, right? So high value attainment equals high job satisfaction. The fourth example is equity. So if you're in a situation where you think you are treated unfairly, then you're not likely to be satisfied with your job. Okay, in this case, equity means fairness. On the other hand, if you do feel like you're treated fairly, then you're likely to be more satisfied. And sometimes it's a little bit strange how it works out. So, for example, there were several times during my own career when I really expected to get a promotion, but I didn't. And one way of dealing with that is saying, this is so unfair. This is not equitable. Why did the other person get the promotion and not me? But if you have a manager that explains the why and the rationale behind why you didn't get the promotion, then even though you're not happy, you might at least say, okay, that's equitable. I understand why I didn't get the promotion. And it's because the person who did get promoted has been more effective than I am. Maybe they're better than I am in certain situations. Maybe they're more effective at getting things done. And maybe there are some things that I need to improve on if I want to get promoted next time. So sometimes managers can create this very equitable situation by explaining to people why they didn't get promoted. All right. But basically, if you're in an equitable situation, you're likely to be satisfied. If you're in an inequitable situation, you're likely to be dissatisfied. And then the last thing here that I'll talk about is sometimes our own dispositions, our own attitudes impact whether we're satisfied with our jobs. In fact, some studies have shown that up to 30% of the satisfaction with our jobs has nothing to do with the job itself, but has to do with our attitudes and our disposition and the way we think about jobs. So it's important when you're hiring people to hire people that you think have the right disposition, the right attitudes toward their jobs, because they're likely to be more satisfied than those that have a more negative disposition. Now, why is it important for us to learn about job satisfaction? Well, again, job satisfaction is directly linked with positive behaviors that we want to have in the workplace. So, for example, if you're highly satisfied at your job, you're likely to be more motivated, you're likely to be more involved in the company, you're likely to have less of a stressful situation at work as well. So job satisfaction is something, again, you want to promote in your employees. How do you promote job satisfaction? Again, it's by focusing on these 5 aspects in the table here and making sure that you understand these and how they impact your company or your team or your class's environment.